Well, I cannot accept that. I do not accept that we cannot find a common sense way to preserve our traditions. Including our basic Second Amendment freedoms and the rights of law-abiding gun owners. While at the same time reducing the gun violence that unleashes so much mayhem on a regular basis. And it may not happen tomorrow, and it may not happen next week. It may not happen next month, but it will happen. Because it's the change that we need, and it's a change overwhelmingly supported by the majority of Americans. By now, though, it should be clear that the change we need will not come from Washington. Even when tragedy strikes Washington. Change will come the only way it ever has come, and that's from the American people. So the question now is not whether, as Americans, we care in moments of tragedy. Clearly. We care. Our hearts are broken again. And we care so deeply about these families. But the question is, do we care enough? Do we care enough to keep standing up for the country that we know is possible? Even if it's hard, and even if it's politically uncomfortable? Do we care enough to sustain the passion and the pressure to make our communities safer and our country safer? Do we care enough to do everything we can to spare other families the pain that is felt here today? Our tears are not enough. Our words and our prayers are not enough. If we really want to honor these 12 men and women, if we really want to be a country where we can go to work, and go to school, and walk our streets free from senseless violence. Without so many lives being stolen by a bullet from a gun, then we're going to have to change. We're going to have to change. On Monday morning, these 12 men and women woke up like they did every day. They left home and they headed off to work. Gerald Reed's wife Kathy said, "See you tonight for dinner." And John Johnson looked at his wife Judy and said what he always said whenever they parted. "Goodbye, beautiful. I love you so much." Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart. Until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. What Robert Kennedy understood, what Dr. King understood, what all our great leaders have always understood. Is that wisdom does not come from tragedy alone or from some sense of resignation in the fallibility of man. Wisdom comes through the recognition that tragedies such as this are not inevitable. And that we possess the ability to act and to change, and to spare others the pain that drops upon our hearts. So in our grief, let us seek that grace. Let us find that wisdom. And in doing so, let us truly honor these 12 American patriots. May God hold close the souls taken from us and grant them eternal peace. May He comfort and watch over these families. And may God grant us the strength and the wisdom to keep safe our United States of America. Barack Obama. National Cybersecurity Communications Integration Center address. Delivered January 13, 2015, Arlington, Virginia. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank Secretary Johnson, Deputy Secretary Mayorkas, and the dedicated public servants of the Department of Homeland Security for welcoming me here today. I've kind of taken over your workspace. I apologize for that, but just pretend that I'm not here. I want you to keep working. I did ask who dressed up for this event, and apparently, a few were brave enough to admit it. But in advance of my State of the Union address next week, I've been rolling out my proposals for keeping our economy on track. Keeping it growing, making sure we're creating jobs and opportunity for the American people. And that includes the extraordinary opportunities that exist in our digital economy. Yesterday, I announced new proposals to better protect Americans from identity theft and to ensure our privacy. Including making sure that our kids are safe from digital. Marketing and intrusions on their privacy based on what they're doing at school. Tomorrow in Iowa, I'll talk about how we can give more families and communities faster. Cheaper access to the broadband that allows them to successfully compete in this global economy. And on Thursday, the Vice President will be in Norfolk to highlight the need to continue to invest in the education and skills for our cybersecurity professionals. But today I am here at DHS to highlight how we can work with the Private sector to better protect American companies against cyber threats. Shortly after I took office, I declared that cyber threats pose an enormous challenge for our country. It's one of the most serious economic and national security challenges we face as a nation. Foreign governments, criminals, and hackers probe America's computer networks every single day. We saw that again with the attack at Sony. Which actually destroyed data and computer hardware that is going to be very costly for that company to clean up. Just yesterday, we saw the hack of a military Twitter account and YouTube channel. No military operations were impacted. So far, it appears that no classified information was released. But the investigation is ongoing, and it's a reminder that cyber threats are an urgent and growing danger. Moreover, much of our critical infrastructure are financial systems, power grids. Pipelines, healthcare systems run on networks connected to the internet. So this is a matter of public safety and of public health. And most of this infrastructure is owned and operated by the private sector. So neither government, nor the private sector can defend the nation alone. It's going to have to be a shared mission, government and industry working hand in hand, as partners. And that's why I've said that protecting our digital infrastructure is a national security priority and a national economic priority. Over the past 6 years, we pursued a comprehensive strategy, boosting our defenses in government. sharing more information with the private sector to help them defend themselves. Working with industry through what we call the cybersecurity framework, not just to respond. To threats and recover from attacks, but to prevent and disrupt them in the first place. And that's where these good folks come in. We are currently at the National Cybersecurity Communications Integration Center, also known as NCHIC. I just got a tour and a briefing. I want to thank everybody here. Not just from DHS but from across government and the private sector, because, again, this is a shared responsibility. This center is one of the critical lines of America's cyber defenses. These men and women work around the clock, 24/7, monitoring threats. Issuing warnings, sharing information with the private sector, and keeping Americans safe. So, as a nation, we owe them thanks, and as a nation, we are making progress. We're more prepared to defend against cyber attacks. But every day, our adversaries are getting more sophisticated and more determined, and more plentiful. So every day, we've got to keep upping our game at the same time. We've got to stay ahead of those who are trying to do us harm. The problem is that government and the private sector are still not always working as closely together as we should. Sometimes it's still too hard for government to share threat information with companies. Sometimes it's still too hard for companies to share information about cyber threats with the government. There are legal issues involved and liability issues. Sometimes, companies are reluctant to reveal their vulnerabilities or admit publicly that they have been hacked. At the same time, the American people have a legitimate interest in making sure that government is not potentially abusing information that it's received from the private sector. So all of us, government and industry, are going to have to keep doing better. The new legislation and proposals I put forward yesterday will help, especially for a strong single national standard for notifying Americans when their information has been breached. Today, I want to announce some additional steps. First, we're proposing new cybersecurity legislation to promote the greater information sharing we need between government and the private sector. This builds and improves upon legislation that we put forward in the past. It reflects years of extensive discussions with industry. It includes liability protections for companies that share information on cyber threats. It includes essential safeguards to ensure that government protects privacy and civil liberties, even as we're doing our job of safeguarding America's critical information networks. I raised this issue again and the need for this legislation with congressional leaders this morning. Including Speaker Boehner and Leader McConnell, and we all agree that this is a threat that has to be addressed. And I am confident that we should be able to craft bipartisan legislation soon to put these systems in place. We're going to keep on working with Congress to get this done. and in the meantime, we're going to do everything we can with our existing authorities to make sure industry gets the information it needs to better defend itself.